And we're ready to roll. Okay. So your two essays, the essay that should be the most cut and dry is your proposed research. You don't have to know exactly what it is that you're going to work on, what exactly the details of the project are going to be, right? Because many of you probably are either seniors or first-year master students and don't know exactly what your project will be, and that's okay. You should at least identify a person, a faculty member at the university that you're proposing to do this research at, and discuss what their research is and what you hope to do as part of that research group, right? And then your personal statement, that's where you're going to address previous research experience. And you need to think in a lot of detail about your background, like all the different ways in which you might have done something that has given you lab or field research experience. This could be, yeah.
So that is just like the statement of purpose when you're applying to a PhD program? Is that, because there's a personal statement and there's a statement of purpose, but the statement of purpose is more like technical, like what you've done. It's like a elaborated resume.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so is that what you're saying, the personal statement for this application?
Yeah, well, okay.
Or is it like personal, like you talk about your life and stuff like that?
Both. I would like to see, I think that you should address your previous experience in both statements, actually. Because any chance you get to elaborate on how qualified you are to do what it is that you're proposing to do, the better. Don't be redundant, but if you can remind them of how successful you've been and how hardworking you've been all along, the better. So can someone tell me what the name of what each of those statements is called?
I think it's the personal statement, relevant background, and future goals.
Personal statement.
You have
Okay.
the personal information, you have the education and other experience, you have the field of study, you have the graduate school information.
Well, that's the application. That's the
Yeah.
online application. I'm talking about the essays.
Oh, the
The
essay.
name of
Personal statement, relevant background, and future goals.
Yeah.
Is that all one?
One.
Future goals.
It's a page.
Okay. And then the other one's called what?
Proposed research.
Just that. Okay. 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 So here's where you get in your broader impacts. That's some personal story that you can tell that indicates to the panelists anything that tells them about how you may come from a diverse background, an economically disadvantaged background, you would put in here. If you had any hurdles that you overcame to get where you are now, you would include in here. You would also include previous research experience here, field, lab experience, even if it's part of a class. If there was a project, because maybe some of you don't really have actual research experience yet, but you had a large, maybe a semester-long project or a project that contributed to helping out the environment, something that has societal impact, anything that gets, again, into the broader impacts. And I'll give you some examples in a little bit. And then obviously your future goals, where do you hope to end up? Where are you going after you finish your master's or your PhD? And it doesn't have to be in academia, right? That could be a place where you address the broader impacts too. And then your proposed research, like I said, that's what you hope to do. And be specific. In both of these essays, be as specific as possible. Lots of details. Proposed research, so identify a faculty member or research group. Research group. If you identify more than one person, and sometimes it makes sense to identify more than one faculty member, make sure that their research is related somehow. Don't say, I want to work with, if it's someone like me, I work on tectonics and mountain building. You wouldn't say, I want to work with Mary Leach and Jason Gerdak, who's a hydrologist who works on groundwater contamination. Doesn't link up in any way that's sensible. So that's what I'm saying, research group. Maybe there are a couple of faculty members that are working on related things or use complementary techniques to solve similar problems. And then you should say something about, details of that kind of research. Of their research, and also, of course, what you hope to contribute. Sorry, it's getting a little too low down here for me to write. Okay, so here's, and I have left this off, the broader impacts. And this is where you really need, you need to sit down and just think to yourself, everything that you've done, all the awards that you've gotten, all of the cool things that you've done in life. If you are a scientist and you're like some all-American sports recognized athlete, put that in there, because the panel discussions will be like, hey, how about that tennis player? We notice those kinds of details. So if you've gotten awards for other things that are cool, put it in there. And it might not be in those statements necessarily, although you could refer to it on the side. If you can say, I just advised Teresa in this department to point out how, the award that she'd gotten to recognize her athleticism and her scholarship, how she could apply the hard work and discipline that she learned as an athlete to the hard work and discipline that she's going to have as a researcher. So think about creative ways to tie things together. I don't think we want to look at this necessarily right now. Let's look at, I wanted to point this out. So this is an old screenshot of the application page. It should look similar at least. Does it? Okay. So there's, all the details, that's fine. Demographic information, totally fill us out, fill it, just, yeah. If you say, don't wish to provide, white male, right? So, okay, here. So you have 16,000 characters in this box to put in all those little, maybe seemingly insignificant, $500 scholarship here, award for being an athlete, something. Get those things in here. Use that space, because you should be filling up every bit of paper or e-paper that you have available to you. Okay. I just had a thought occurred to me, and I just want to mention it so that I don't forget to say it. When you're writing about your proposed research, cite some paper. papers. Okay, so go, cite the literature. Cite literature and refer to, and if you can in here, refer to anything that you've published, an abstract at a meeting, a thesis. Get those things in there. It's another way to beef up everything. Yeah.
For the format for the literature cited, I've seen in some Nature papers, I think, this really abbreviated
Do that.
format. Do that
Do that so that you can spend your characters on telling them about yourself. So I would use numbers within the text, blah, 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 1. And then at the very bottom of your page, you cite reference 1, and you can do an abbreviated reference citation. So just last author's name, abbreviation for the journal, year. That's it, the brief.
Regarding your publications, let's say you're working on your master's thesis now, but you're not going to be published until you've graduated. Is there a way to mention that you will have a publication, or does it really not matter if it's not?
Sure, say that you plan on publishing your thesis as a paper. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So that's space. I don't think there's anything else I want to say here. Yeah. So not only do these awards have to do with what you say, but the NSF and Congress have a say in this, in distributing the awards across the country. So if you grew up in California or New York, that's going to work against you in some ways. If you grew up in Wyoming, that's a good thing. So they use they ask you where you went to high school in here. They use that. They call that your state of residency. So that's a bonus for you. What else do I want to say here? Questions on this application? This is pretty straightforward, but I just wanted to make sure you saw that field with 16,000 characters, or whatever the limit is right now. Use it.
Why is not enough in California against you?
Because there are so many more applicants from California. And we also have a bunch of techies here and offspring of techies and, a lot of competitive people applying. Okay. Let's go to the broader impact examples. And this is something that I'll give you. Hopefully you've done some kind of outreach or community service or something, been the president of your department's club. Anything that you can think that makes you sound like you're going to give back to society, the better. Volunteered at the library, you can bring that in somehow. Yeah.
So, if it's not really community service related to science at all, is that still work?
Yes. Like, what? Do you have an example?
Like working at a soup kitchen?
Yes, absolutely. Totally. Because you're making an impact. Anyone else want to bounce thoughts off me right now about that? Not yet. Okay. So the criteria are, here are some. How well does the activity advance the discovery and understanding while promoting teaching, training, and learning? Okay. Any volunteering in a K-12 classroom, something like that. Outreach on campus, again, department clubs. How well does the proposed activity broaden the participation of underrepresented groups? So by gender, ethnicity, disability, or geographic diversity. I had a grad student who went out into the field early and went to a remote village in the Zanskar Himalaya and helped them put together a library for their school. And that was something that I had him elaborate on a lot. To what extent will it enhance the infrastructure for research and education, such as facilities, instrumentation, networks, and partnership? Have you done anything like created a website that does any kind of outreach or helps your group function better, do better science, made an app, something like that? Will the results be disseminated broadly to enhance scientific and technological understanding? There's a web page opportunity right there again. Like maybe you blog about science or about being a woman in science or something like that. It should have been established prior to this week. So, because we do have access to the internet when we're there and we can check if we feel like it. What may the benefits of the proposed activity be to society? That's the examples that you're saying. So anything, like think broadly about this. All right, so here are some examples. Advancing discovering and understanding while promoting teaching, training, and learning. Again, okay, what do you pick out? So again, K-12 things, non-science majors, recruiting. Have you done any campus recruitment for your department? Helped any K-12 teachers, not just students? Developed any educational materials, databases, anything, like I said, that helps your group, an app, something like that, a web page? Anything that brings together research and learning or education. Let's see, mentoring high school students. Okay, I think that's pretty clear, those kinds of examples. You should stop me if you want me to elaborate.
Project Seed mentoring?
Huh?
The ACS Project Seed mentoring for that?
Yeah, anything like that. If you've been a mentor, have you like tutored? Have you, helped out students who are doing less well in classes, just because you want to help? Anything like that? So don't just think that, I haven't done anything, I've just gone to school and that's it. Surely you can think of something. You must put something in here. You must address the broader impacts. So use words like society, education, outreach, what else? Just bring in those terms that you're going to see on this broader impacts sheet here. Use those terms because we will see those terms. We have to read a lot of applications. And think of all the materials that you're supplying. You're supplying an application, GRE scores, transcripts, the 2 essays, letters of recommendation, and now multiply that by 40. That's what I have to read. And so I'm not going to spend a month doing this, right? It's got to stand out to the panelists.
Maybe can I just intersect something? Is anybody participating in the Bay Area Science Festival? So that would be something to add as well, and then really kind of describe a little bit how you reach out to the public, right? So educate the public or bring science closer to the public, something like that. So that's what you can use.
Yeah, anything. Like I said, think broadly. What I do when I sit down one-on-one, and I was hoping to avoid 40 one-on-one conversations by having this today, is I say, okay, tell me more about that. What was this thing that you wrote down on the application? And oftentimes it's something like, you should totally elaborate on that and bring it in. I've had students volunteer at national parks as a docent. That's awesome. That's outreach to the public. Okay, so this one is examples of activities of broadening participation of underrepresented groups. Okay, so research and education collaborations with students and faculty with members from underrepresented groups. Campus visits, presentations at institutions that serve underrepresented groups. early career scientists. So high schoolers, have you taken a group of high schoolers around and shown them your lab or something like that? Okay, that's good enough for that one. And yeah.
I have a question. So with those sort of things that maybe have been for one day or a weekend sort of event, how long is it appropriate to talk in your statement about things that were just like one weekend and that's it?
Hopefully you have other things that you want to spend more time on in your essay, and then give it a proportionate amount of attention. If you don't have anything else to talk about, expand, right? Talk about what it is. Don't just say, I got a scholarship, I got this Maxwell scholarship. Don't just say that. Say, I was awarded the Maxwell Scholarship that recognizes students for exceptional blah, 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 expand. Yeah.
Sorry. For broader impacts, do you have like a good number of activities to aim for to talk about? Because you don't want to like inundate them with like everything you've ever done, right?
What are the most important ones? Focus on the most important ones. And no, you don't want to just like start a list in your essay, right? The list you can put in that 16,000 character box. Surely there are one or two or three that are more important or more impactful that you want to focus on. And you could refer back to your application if you need to say all the other things I've listed here. Does that answer your question well enough?
Yeah.
Okay. Enhance infrastructure for research and education. Here's some examples. Identify and establish collaborations between disciplines. Have you brought together, is your project bringing together chemistry and biology, like cross-disciplinary stuff? That's cool. NSF is looking for that kind of stuff right now. Support development and dissemination of next-generation instrumentation, multi-user facilities. Like our SEM lab, some of you may have used before, the scanning electron microscope. It serves many different departments, and we've had high school kids come through that lab, and we certainly tell NSF all of those things, that it serves multiple communities. Maintain, operate, modernize shared research and education infrastructure. Is anyone involved with CEPL? Right, so you've got that going for you. That's or taken the is it GK12 class? What's it? Biology 6. What is that class? Kimberly Tanner's class.
Oh, teaching.
The teaching.
Science teaching for
If you've
scientists.
done that, totally include that in your personal statement. Talk about that experience because, right? I mean, ideally, I think certainly if you're a biologist, you went out and taught biology lessons in a classroom and worked with a teacher. That's super awesome. Totally talk about that. Okay, where were we? Upgrade the computation and computing infrastructure. I'm reading some of these because I just I'm trying to trigger like synapses, right? Like think of those things that you haven't thought of yet. Computing resources, information tools, large databases, networks, digital libraries. Have you helped out your PI by mentoring other students in your group? Have you helped them figure out how to use the computers in your lab or the software in your lab? Right? That's mentoring. Okay. Next one, broad dissemination to enhance scientific and technological understanding. Some examples. Partner with museums, nature centers, science centers, other institutions, Cal Academy here, U.S. Geological Survey. Help me name some places around here. Partner with industry at all? Does your group do that? Ushi, do you have any other ideas of institutions around here that maybe for the biologists that I'm not thinking of?
Park service?
The what?
Park service?
Park service, okay. Anything else?
Biomarin,
Huh?
so if they work together with Biomarin, because Biomarin has a lot of open houses, open days or whatever. So that's something, or the Bach Institute, so, or who else is in our area?
What about Romberg?
Romberg.
Tiburon Center, so that shows you that you are collaborative research.
Yeah. So things like that. Okay. Involved public or industry. Any presentations to the community. Been on the radio. That would be very cool. Made data available to people. Have you made lessons available to teachers or data available to other groups? Maybe at another university. Have you published? Certainly. Anything, an abstract, a website, anything non-technical. Have you participated in the college competition where you put up a poster or just that? There are two different events that, what are they called?
CSU FERC, there's the CSU FERC.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that's in January or whatever, so
Yeah.
that's right, I do know. So, and then there is the CSU competition, so student competition.
Right. So anything like that, put it in there because it's a non-refereed publication, your abstract. Certainly, if have anything to do with policymakers, Congress, interdisciplinary conferences, workshops. If you presented or participated in workshops or conferences, get that in there too. What else? Okay, that's good. Benefits to society. Let's have some examples of those. I'm focusing on this because this is the hardest thing to do. Hopefully talking about your previous research experience is easy, and your proposed research also. Demonstrate linkage between discovery and societal benefit by providing examples and explanations regarding the application of research and education results. Partner with scientists, staff at federal agencies, private sector, technological scientific projects that integrate research into broader programs that maybe have a state or a national or maybe even international interest. Anything you've done that helps communicate to a non-scientist. Okay. And that's the end of that document. So I will make this document available to you. I'll send it out to your email address, or I may just put these things online that you can download instead of attaching a bunch of things, but you'll get it again. Yeah, make sure you sign in. The people who came in late, there's a sign-in sheet there. Yeah.
So if we've talked with people at other universities about collaborating on a project, like we don't have to submit any, or we're not supposed to submit any supporting documentation, like here's an email saying that they're...
No, don't do that.
Yeah, no, right. But then does it, does it add strength to the broader impacts if we say I've already talked with this person and...
Yeah, and talk about what it is that you're trying to collaborate on.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, give some details, like what's the purpose of the collaboration, what it is, why is it that you're doing it, what's the outcome, why is it important. Every single one of every time you discuss your previous research experience and your proposed research experience, make sure you're answering the question, why is this important? Why should I care when I'm reading it? It's one thing to just talk about whatever tiny little part of science you're going to contribute to, but tell me why it's important. How does it apply to the broader fields? Yeah.
For like Rise and Mark scholarship recipients, it's typical that like a seminar or colloquium is included, and usually in the colloquium, it's a semester-long thing. They train us like on research ethics. Do we include like what was in the seminar?
Include some details.
Okay.
And like I said, make it proportional to the other things you're going to include. If you don't have much else, then expand on that. Ushi?
Mary, can I intersect something to the collaborative research that the student just mentioned? So if you really propose collaborative research, let also your letter writers know what you're proposing. Because in the letters, we are supposed to really address the significance of the future research that you're doing. And so if your letter writer doesn't have any idea of your research, then the letter writer just may say entirely something that does not go in sync with your application.
So-
right? So as soon as you really have your research or a couple of sentences of the research that you're proposing, make a really kind of succinct statement and send that to your letter writer so that they really can say, okay, this is what the person is proposing.
Yes, prepare your letter writers, right, exactly. Give them your application, give them access to all of it, send it to them. Tell them that you are required to address intellectual merit and broader impacts. And give them some tidbits to use so that they can bring it in. One thing that I did when I applied for my job here was I asked each letter writer to address different things. Could you point out what we did together here? And so each of them would call on different things about me to make sure those were emphasized. Yeah, it's important. Send them a detailed email. Was there another hand back there? I thought. Okay. Any questions about eligibility? Yeah.
Well, it's more of a, like, I don't think they would state this, but I'm just wondering, like, what kind of, are you very, very unlikely to get accepted if you have like a 3.7 instead of a 4.0?
I think 3.7 is great.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I don't know. I feel like a lot of the times there's so many.
There are gonna be superstars. There's gonna be like that guy who everyone's like, oh yeah, that guy's getting one. But yeah, don't worry about that.
What about like a 3.2?
Hopefully the other stuff that you're doing makes up for that. And if you have a reason why you got a 3.2, I was talking to, picking on Teresa again, she was at a Canadian university where they don't hand out A's quite as readily. And I said, you need to explain that to the panelist. Explain why you have a 3.2 or 3.3. Was there some life challenge that caused that? Was it that you were double majoring into really difficult subjects or something? Yeah, and apparently the GREs are optional now. And my advice to her, and maybe Ushi will have a different opinion, my advice was if the GREs are not good, I'm talking the quantitative, because from my perspective, the quantitative is the most important because we're scientists. If their quantitative score is low, I think I would err on the side of caution and not include the score, because some panelists really focus on the numbers, really focus on the GPA and the GRE. So to avoid that problem, I would say leave it out. If you have a high quantitative score and low verbal or writing score, I think I would include it. Yeah.
So what's a good quantitative?
The new system always like screws me up. I haven't learned the new system yet.
Like in 130s or something.
You think like percentiles maybe?
Percent.
That's like 90. That's like
I-
70 percentile and above is good.
Oh, I don't know. What do you think, Ushi?
It has to do with the whole package. So for example, if you are in a lower percentile, but your package looks good, your research looks good, and your whole thing looks good, then some reviewers will overlook where you are placed in the package. So for example, if you would apply to UC San Diego is not forgiving in anything. So if they're reviewers, if you have reviewers from them, you know, okay, I can pack. So, but if you really kind of are opposite the University of Washington, right? So they look at your whole package. And then really kind of, so if you are lucky and have reviewers from the University of Washington, they look at your whole package and say, oh man, maybe a bad day, or maybe not really kind of well prepared to really kind of do these tests. So it depends on your whole package. So try to get your best package forward. And if you know that you have deficiencies in a certain area, don't hide it. So, because reviewers will see it.
Will see
and then
it.
Suddenly it will say, oh, did that person really try to hide it? And then you're off the table. So if you really kind of are really
Yeah.
kind of heading somewhere in an area that is problematic for you, just kind of say it, acknowledge it, and say acknowledging that I blah, 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 and then really kind of add your strengths in the same sense.
Right. I
So
agree.
just kind of acknowledge your weaknesses, but really kind of enhance them with strengths that you have.
So use positive language, right? Positive language, address it, but don't dwell. Like a sentence, explain and move on. Okay, yeah.
So if you did have something like the academic GPA was like kind of on the lower end, where would you include that? Or like if you have certain things that are
It's going to show up in the main application. I would include it in your personal statement. Personal statement to explain any deficiencies.
But don't
But-
dwell on
And don't start with it, for God's sake.
Right.
Start positive.
For example, you could say, okay, my overall GPA is 3.2. However, my science GPA is 3
Exactly.
whatever.
Or your GPA and your major.
Right, your
Right?
major GPA, right? So just kind of say
Right.
something, really acknowledge the weakness, but really in the same sentence say, okay, look, but I have A's in that subject that
Yeah.
I'm going to pursue.
You had your hand up.
Do students who typically have good GPAs and good GRE scores, but don't necessarily have all that experience outside of school and participation in programs and stuff like that, they typically get an NSF scholarship or no?
The focus is on the research and the experience. Like, what are you proposing to do? Does it make sense? Are you proposing to go to the institution and work with a faculty member who can help you do that best? Do you have access to labs and the resources that you need? Do you have the experience and have you demonstrated that you can carry a project out? And can you complete it? How do we know that you're going to be successful? That's the most important. The broader impact stuff, that will either bump you down or bump you up above someone else with similar experience. You're not gonna, if you have like a terrible, you have no previous research experience and you have like a terrible
I
plan.
didn't mean research, I just meant like all this extra stuff that you mentioned throughout your life. You know, I went and helped out here and did all this great stuff.
Yeah.
I'm just saying like,
Don't-
you were purely just academic.
Don't spend your entire personal statement on that.
Uh-huh.
Make sure you get your previous research in here too. But if you have a really compelling story, get that in here, and hopefully you have enough room to deal with your previous research experience here. Yeah, because this doesn't say that it has to be previous research experience. I'm just hoping that you have enough to say in these 2 or 3 pages that you'll want to talk about it in the personal statement. Does that answer your question all right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't play sports and all that kind of stuff.
Uh-huh.
Ran track, I just did school, you know.
That's okay. That's all right. But come up with something that you're gonna do. What do you want to do in the future? Okay, that's you can put your broader impact. You could frame it like that.
One day I
If
will
you've
run track.
done nothing else, I'm gonna be an Olympic athlete. No, what I mean is like you want to start blogging about your experience in grad school, or you're gonna work. If you're a biologist, maybe you're gonna be a doctor and serve rural communities that don't have access to doctors, or something like that. What you're gonna do in the future. Get it there. You have to address it somehow.
So we're, I think, required 3 letters of recommendation.
And it said up to 5, and it actually says they recommend use the 5 if you can. Now, I think that's a little excessive because it's just like more stuff for us to read. But if you have 5 people who can say glowing things about you, then use it.
Just wondering, like, what do you recommend asking? Like, professors are obvious enough to get, like, I don't know, past mentors, like, people outside academic fields?
So what I've noticed about letters that come from academics versus outside of academia is that people inside academia know how to write a good letter and know what panelists are looking for, and people outside don't. So they sometimes tend to write less good letters. I don't know if you have a different opinion about that, but that's what I've seen. But I know that at your community garden, you need to have someone write a letter about their experience with you in the community garden. So I have 2 hands. Yeah.
So, what if we're applying for different graduate programs, for multiple
Yes, I think that you should focus on one, your ideal place. If that's difficult for you to, well, they ask you only, do they ask you to list all the schools you're applying to? Just one. Then focus on that one. Because you don't know if you're going to be admitted yet or not, right? So you have to assume that you're going to be admitted. And hopefully you've had a conversation with that faculty member already and communicated with them.
On the letter thing, I was under the impression when I was reading the application that they say that you can put up to 5 in case one of your top 3 doesn't submit.
That's
their
true,
letter,
yeah, right.
And that your 4th and 5th letter don't get looked at. Because you rank your letters.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And so
Oh, I didn't
it's more
notice
of a
that
backup
part.
thing.
Backup, okay.
So if you
Then-
know your 3 letters are gonna submit, then
Yeah.
it's fine to have 3.
Yes.
Is the impression.
Apparently, yes. If you know that they're going to do it, then go with just the 3. But I would choose academics, faculty, mentors, or instructors in classes first.
So,
I see your hand.
so if you've been involved in sort of an extensive outreach, education.
Long term, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, if it's several months and, producing a film. Basically.
Cool.
And I would like to have the producer of the film make a recommendation, but she's not in academia. Is that appropriate?
Prepare. It sounds like yes, and it sounds like that's really cool. And we'll be talking about the filmmaker when we are discussing applications. I would say yes, but prepare him or her well. Explain. Don't give them all your materials and help them write the letter by giving them some bullet points of like what to include. I saw your hand first.
Yeah, I was just wondering if you worked in a lab, if it's okay to get a letter of recommendation from your PI and then maybe from like a postdoc that you also.
If you worked really closely with the postdoc and less so with the PI, that could be helpful. But if you've got 3 PIs, then I would go with the PIs first. You have to kind of evaluate, because the PIs have worked with many more students than the postdoc has. So they have a lot more to compare you to. So if the PI says glowing things about you, that has more impact than the postdoc saying, yeah, this dude is great.
So as a first year grad student, if we do like a half-time the second semester, does that mean we're still eligible to apply for the next fall also?
Wait, say that again. You did what? A first year is half-time?
If we do,
They count by months, I think. 12 months, not units. Is that what you're saying? You were half-time?
like if we don't get it this year, can we still apply next year?
You can apply at 4 different times. You can apply as a senior, in the fall semester or term of your first year of graduate studies, and the fall semester of your second year in. And then there's a 4th category, but probably does anyone apply, eligible for the 4th category?
Have a gap of 3 years between.
Right, that's the 4th category, right.
But so for this is something that
So can I just say, so if you have a large gap in time and came back to school, or changed fields, then you can also apply to the number 4.
For the 12-month gap, if you can apply, if I applied now and I didn't get it and I apply again next fall, wouldn't that be more than 12 months in school? Because school starts in August or something.
Trust me, it's okay. You can apply the first term. If you've just gone the 1 year of grad school, it's okay. You can apply again the next fall. However, the competition gets harder and harder because we compare like to like. So we think, okay, this person is a senior still. That explains a lot, right? And so we know if you're in your second year you're starting your second year of grad school, there better be abstracts, maybe even a publication already on that, in your statement. So we're expecting more and more.
In terms of the references and talking about explaining reasons why your application might not be the best. So if you have a lower GPA and you have a reason outside of school that explains the GPA, and you have a reference person who was kind of going through the situation with you and also a mentor, how much should
Also an
they-
academic? Or,
Yes.
um,
Like how much should they address that situation, and then how much should you have them try and also explain?
I think that they maybe should address it, but again, I wouldn't dwell.
Okay.
Talk about your strengths. Emphasize the positive. Use positive language. Get the negative stuff out of your essays completely. I saw a hand, yeah.
I was just wondering if you know offhand how many internships they grant.
I did see something. 20,000. Yeah, it was like I don't.
I thought it was 2,000.
Estimated number of awards is 2,000, and then it depends. They get proportioned out based on the number of applications. So if biology has more applications this year, they will be given more awards to hand out. So the more people that apply, the more awards you get. So that's good. So don't hesitate and apply. Go ahead and apply. Do apply. Other questions? I think I've said everything that I wanted to tell you guys. I guess I'm willing to address individual questions one-on-one if you would want to just ask. And Ushi's here too. I don't know if you can stay and answer some questions. Yeah, go for it. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was wondering, should I just come on?
Just come up. Yeah. Yeah. All right. Thanks for coming. Make sure you sign the sign-in sheet, and I will send the broader impact stuff and a few other things that I have that might be helpful.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Are there questions that you guys have? So that we should address first?
No group questions?
Should we go over the research proposal?
We could, if you want. I have an example that someone is willing to share. That's fine. We can do that. I had another thought. Yeah, let me find one. Peterman. Proposed research. Is that what you're asking about? Okay. I gotta plug in before I share.
But I guess what immediately jumps out is that's a lot of references.
Yeah, that is, and not only that, but she's used way too much space. So that's not. I mean, she was given an award, but I wouldn't do it this way. This is wasted space. I would abbreviate all this, shrink it, and not only that, but do them in series. Like start 2 here, start 3 there.
Okay.
Don't just put it on a few lines.
Seriously.
Yeah, that's seriously a lot of space.
Use, because you are allowed to use a font of, what does it say?
I don't know.
Or whatever, right? So
Use the small font.
For
Yeah,
the
and
But
right?
use.
So still stay in the requirements.
Yes.
Because there's a requirement. But if you can really kind of, or really kind of 0.98, nobody will find 0.98 between the lines.
She got an award, but I mean, you say this person got an award, but would you as a reviewer look at that and wonder if she's filling up space?
She was such a superstar, it didn't matter.
It does not, because in some cases, you really kind of, because if you're really working in a field that is not well established, right? So you really kind of go into a field where everybody really questions the merit of your science, you have to do more referencing. If you work in a field that is well established, where everybody knows, oh yeah, that is really kind of important and all of that, you don't have to have so many references. Right, so, and although it's really kind of not good to use overview articles because they want to know if you're familiar with the primary literature, but sometimes it may help that you use 1 or 2 overviews so that it helps to cover, because in overviews, most of the scientists who work in the field are cited, so you really kind of can say cited in
See
that
refs
overview. So
in
you-
1. Yeah.
Right, so that helps you, but don't make the mistakes and only cite review articles. That's not good, because then they know that you are not familiar with the primary literature. You have to be familiar with the primary literature.
I think 22 references is overkill,
It's
way
overkill.
overkill.
Right.
10,
It's
half
okay.
that
Yeah.
is fine. But you really have to cite the literature. That tells us you know how to write scientifically and that you know how to incorporate that. That's important. Okay, let's blow this up.
If you had to weigh the two sections, which one would you say is more?
These two essays?
Yeah.
The proposed research. Because that's what the award is going to support you in, right? And it's also hard to write, right? Are you laughing because it's like, I don't know what I'm going to do?
No, I'm laughing because I'm excited that it's more focused on the proposed research because I struggle more with the personal statement.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about the proposed.
No, absolutely. It boils down. It's all about the science, right? I said the broader impacts, your whatever crazy background, that is just gonna help. Yeah.
With the personal statement, relevant background, and future goal statement, do you can you provide guidance as to how much page space on average you think we should spend on each of those points? Is there a different section for broader impacts?
Hopefully, not a different section. No, in the same essay.
Right.
Yeah, and not only that, but you should organize this so that we can find things. Use subheadings. So show us where your future goals are. Show us where your relevant background, your previous research. Relevant. You could use these words: relevant background and previous research, or something like that. Yeah, and point to things so that we can easily scan and find it. But as far as your question, your previous research experience is the most important.
And what you should also do is read the solicitation and use the language that is in the solicitation.
And I'm gonna give you this whole big thing is
it's nothing worse than we as reviewers, we really kind of have to look and say, okay, where does he or she put this? Where does he or she put this?
Yeah.
So the more obvious it is, if it is in a nice heading, 2 words or 3 words, it's very easy for us to find. Oh yeah, address. And some reviewers go actually, they have a what I call a check mark list.
Mm-hmm.
So they go by check.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
exactly.
I have all issues addressed. So and then they really kind of say, okay, how is the research and all of that.
Right.
So, but if they have their checklist filled in, then you are really rising already to the top of that reviewer's list.
And your headings, you don't have to say future goals and then start on the next line. You could colon and start there. Don't waste space.
Right.
If you use your space. Question.
I've seen a couple of examples where people actually bold like parts of like within the paragraph they bold like broader impacts. Is that kind of too much?
If you did it a little bit, it would be okay. If you go crazy, it's annoying.
And the bolding may not show up as good as you think, so a better thing is underlining. So if you really kind of need to make somebody aware of something that is really important, rather use underlining than bolding, because on somebody's computer, the bold may not really show up.
That's a good point, yeah. But
Right?
don't go
So
crazy.
Don't overdo it. So because if you have every sentence
The whole thing.
underlining,
It's really
right, so then it loses the purpose.
I found the section in the solicitation. It says 12-point Times New Roman font or computer modern latex font. It says 10-point font can be used for references, footnotes, figure captions, and text within figures.
Right.
1-inch margins, single space, or greater. So follow those guidelines.
And use for the references and everything that is really kind of not that important 10 point fine.
Yeah.
But the statement like this cannot be in 10 points.
No,
Right.
it says 12, so use 12. Don't make anyone annoyed. And plus, you never
And
know.
then it will fall actually out of the review. It will not go into the review.
That's true.
Because when your proposal arrives at the NSF, because you have to do it via FastLane, right? So when it arrives at the NSF, it's automatically checked for all the components that it should have and all the guidelines. And if it does not comply, it just doesn't go into the review process at all.
Yeah, you don't want to do that. I'm not sure how useful it's going to be to actually go through the successful one. Maybe the personal statement instead? Just because this is a lot of jargon, the personal statement. I mean,
Maybe
I can
good to really kind of focus on what the first paragraph has to say.
I was just going to do that. Let me just give you like what she's doing in each paragraph. So the first paragraph explains the importance and the kind of like the historical background of the technique that she's going to use. And then she goes into explaining. So in this case, she's using radiometric dating, a couple different methods. And in the second paragraph, she's saying the mineral that she's going to use. So she's going to apply the radiometric dating techniques to this specific mineral called monazite. And then she goes into detail explaining how it works and why it works. And at the very end, she's explaining how she's going to apply it to her field area. So she's going to use those techniques using that mineral to this field area and what she's going to get out of it. Then she goes into the previous work using that mineral for radiometric dating, advantages and disadvantages of it. Then she goes into the instrumentation that she's going to use.
Do those kind of specifics look really good?
Oh yes, you will. If you think you've included detail already, add more, because you really need to explain everything. Because in geosciences, in biology, there's so many different subfields. You're just going to get just right for a scientist, an educated scientist, but not someone who understands exactly what you're doing. Okay, that's why details. Use explanation. Yeah. Details of the methods, why it works, the importance.
What if your research isn't really going to use a lot of fancy equipment?
Give me an example.
I don't know, like what, well, I think I'm going to do pollinator work or hybridization studies for plants.
Pollination's like really important.
Okay, so it's alright if I don't have all these fancy instruments.
Oh, isn't the whole like bees and stuff it's a problem with pollination? That's like explain why it's so important. Yeah, I mean, I know about that. I'm not a biologist, so explain that.
So when we as researchers write a proposal, what we always have to do is we have to really sell our research. So that means the research has to be significant, it has to be innovative. We have to know what we would like to do long term, what we would like to do short term. So the long term goal is the long term goal, but the short term goal are what we call the specific objectives. Right? So what specifically do we like to do? Then they would like to know from us, can we really do what we are proposing to do? Are we qualified to do what we are proposing to do? So we have to do an approach method section, experimental section or something, right? So you don't have to really kind of write weigh 0.22 grams of such and such and react it with such and such, but give a general overview over the methodology and the experiment that you will do. And then once you have done that, give the expected outcome. So what is your research going to do? So what do you expect from it? And then where does it fit in and how does it move the field forward? Right? So and if you really do something similar to that we are doing as really kind of as scientists for most of our lives, then I think it will be viewed it will review very well because they see, oh man, you know exactly where you would like to go. You know exactly what you would like to do. So avoid that floundering, that, oh, I may be doing this, I may be doing this. No, I will be doing this. Or this direction will be pursued or something. So don't be really vague because vagueness will not really help you. So the more you can write what you will be doing, the better it's going to be.
So
I'm a second year grad student, so I'm into my project and I'm looking at PhD programs, but I don't know sort of what the next step is. Should I focus on my current project or should I focus
Wait,
on
so you're doing master's project right now, and
Right.
you want to do a PhD.
right? So should I, in terms of writing a proposed research, I mean I've written that like as my perspectives for my master's program. Do I build on that for something like this, or do I?
It would be great if you could connect the two
Okay.
somehow. How your current research is going to prepare you for your PhD research, and how your PhD research is going to build on what you've already learned. Like where you go, you like learned one technique and applied it to a certain place, and next you're going to learn a different technique and apply it to the same thing, or you're going to apply the same technique to a different thing, or something like that. Like link the two, but I think I would focus on what you know best, which is your master's research, and then at the end explain what you're going to do. Link the two, and then explain what you're going to do in your PhD. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, that sounds okay. And when you really kind of describe your research, tell the reviewers with whom you are thinking of working or with whom you're already working. And don't really kind of don't assume that everybody knows everybody in the field. So say, oh, I work with Dr. X. Dr. X is an expert in, and he has won a couple of awards or something. Or he was like Dr. Leach, an NSF career awardee. NSF career awardees are the most difficult grants to get for young investigators. So if you work with somebody who really kind of distinguishes him or herself in that field, just don't be shy and put it in.
Say it, yeah. Don't be shy. Don't be shy at all in this whole thing.
Right.
This is about self-promotion. You are awesome. Now just tell us how you're awesome.
So just to clarify, don't be shy in mentioning that our PI is an NSF career.
Right, so just kind of say, I'm working with, in your case, with Dr. Ishimura. Dr. Ishimura is an expert in X, Y, and Z, and he received in his junior or
He had a career award as well, yeah.
He was awarded an NSF career award. So just kind of, not more, don't really kind of say what the research was all about. Just kind of, he was an NSF career awardee, that's perfectly fine. Or he was honored by certain awards, right? So NSF awards are really kind of good. So, or I really kind of say, I'm working in a laboratory that is funded by NSF, helps.
Yeah, if the project is supported by NSF, you know that you've got money. So that's part of this question. Are you qualified to do the research, and are you working at the right institution and with the right PI? Bring in the NSF money here. Is NSF supported? Or what's the other one? NHS. Or NIH. Yeah, NIH.
Although really kind of be a little bit more conservative when it comes to NIH, because your research cannot be that it can be only funded by NIH. So NIH is health, sickness, so anything that has to do with human well-being. NSF is basic science. So don't say, oh, I'm going to develop this drug. You are out, right? Because NSF will not promote drug development. So rather say, I will develop the basic science to understand how this drug may interact with. That's perfectly fine. But don't say, I'm going to develop a drug.
Question?
Actually, I have two. So the first one, does it matter what school you're proposing to go to?
Yeah.
Like, do they give preference to certain schools or
No.
don't like certain schools?
No, it's all about you, really. And as far as, like I said, the geographical distribution. So it's about what you're going to do, whether you're qualified, all this stuff. Like, is the intellectual merit excellent? Where you want to go is only important in this context. Are you going to the right place to get that research that you're proposing to do done? And are you working with the right person? That's the only way it matters.
And my second question is, if you were an NIH Rise or Rich Fellow, is that bad that you were?
That sounds like a good thing.
Well, I'm just saying because of the whole NIH NSF.
No, that is because if you will kind of say, I was supported during my undergraduate time, I was supported to do research on by NIH and Vice, that's perfectly fine. But don't really kind of, when you propose your research, don't say, I'm going to develop this drug. right?
So,
So
and
NSF
you're
does
gonna,
not,
you're gonna talk about that here, right?
Yeah.
Right, okay.
right?
I was wondering about the subject, like what, say I'm physics, but I do research in optics that's specifically designed for biophysics and
Mm.
not drug development.
Biophysics is perfectly fine.
Okay, I was just wondering if they
Which
look at fields
to
and say
apply.
like, oh, biophysics field, we'll allocate awards here, or if it's just all of physics.
You know, this came up last year when I was reviewing one of the applications I read. It was a chemist applying to the geosciences panel, and I didn't think it was appropriate. They were fundamentally a chemist. So you need to choose the most appropriate field. Is that maybe what your question was too?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're going to have to see,
This is
self-assess.
definitely like a subset of multiple fields
Right.
in one.
You go biophysics.
I would say,
Biophysics?
You go biophysics.
Okay.
So because there is where you may have experts, because what you like to do is that your proposal is reviewed by somebody who is an insider in the field. So if it is going to be reviewed by a little bit, quote unquote, a little bit outsider of the field, they may not understand what you really try to do. So if you are biophysical, go for the biophysics. Don't really kind of go for the physics, because there may be astrophysics in there, and astrophysicists may not really be familiar. I'm not saying they are not familiar, but they may not be familiar with the biophysical technique that you're using. So go biophysics.
did everyone notice the questions that I listed up here? Make sure you address these. What will you do? Why is it important? How are you going to do the research? What results do you hope to get? How does it apply to the bigger picture? So you want to go to the small scale, explain the details of your technique, the details of what it is you're doing, but also bring in how does it apply to the bigger picture, right? And again, are you qualified to do the research? Are you working at the right institution and with the right PI?
I've seen different NSF research proposal styles. But one thing I've seen frequently is like where they have these specific themes and then they go into details. Does it matter? Like I noticed this is formatted differently. Does it matter how we present it?
It needs to make sense. You know, just like I was going through this statement here, I mean, it makes logical sense, the order in which they're presenting what they want to do. Is that the question you're asking, is like how to do it?
No, like presentation wise, some of the proposals I've seen are very like distinct about separating. Like, okay, this is my specific aim.
Subheadings and things.
Yeah.
I think it helps to have subheadings, but don't go crazy with it.
Right.
You know, if you have 2 pages, 4 or 5 at most subheadings, yeah. Should I continue with this? Yeah? Okay, so where we were, let's see, we ended with the previous work. So she's summarizing previous research done that's similar. She's in this paragraph demonstrating like why this is going to be successful. Here's the reason it's been done previously and it worked. And then here she's saying, this is what I'm going to do. I am going to look at how differences in the monazite affect the age that you get out. Then the first step in her research is to do X. The first method she's going to use is this, and she lists all the different methods. And then she summarizes here, project incorporates a variety of methods. It's on the frontier of radiometric dating, defining new protocols. She's going to do something new, so we're going to get a new technique out of this, hopefully. And then the summary sentence that says, like, what she's going to do, and here she's bringing in large-scale Earth processes. Okay, so tie it to the bigger picture toward the
I
end.
would kind of can help you with the first paragraph. So if you can convince the reviewers in the first paragraph that what you are doing is really novel, it's innovative, it's great, and the outcomes are really going to move science forward. That will really help the reviewers, because what I have seen over the years is, in earlier years when I started out my careers, we didn't write the proposals in the way that we are writing in them now. Right now, everybody would like to know at their fingertips, the first sentence, what is going to happen and what should I look for? Right, so if we have to read the proposal until the end, and then at the end, just know what you're going to do, that will not really go well over. However, if there is a really good starting statement where you really are,
Yeah,
like
so you could
something
write a different version of this at the beginning.
and then
Yeah.
wrap it out in the end.
Bring it
That
full
is
circle,
great.
yeah. Bring it
Go
full circle.
full
yeah.
circle.
Yeah.
That is really great, because then they know, oh man, this is really focused. This is so from the get-go. We as reviewers know, oh man, this deals with that. The goal is this. The specifics is this, and this is the outcome. You have won with us, right? So because we know, oh man, it's really focused. Unless your research is really old, 20 years, 25 years ago.
Yeah.
However, if you really kind of bring back research that was done 25 years ago and you have an entirely new idea, say, research has been done 25 years ago, but now we will look at it from a very different perspective.
Do your homework, right? Go and look at the literature and find it. Know what it is you're getting into if you don't already with if you're proposing to go on to a PhD program. Do some homework, read the papers that the PI has on their website or something so that you can talk intelligently about it. Okay, so that was the summary of the research proposal. This is back from a few years ago, so there were 3 separate essays, and now the previous research is incorporated into the personal statement. But since we had a request to look at the personal statement, here's one. She created and taught a pilot Spanish language program at a small rural elementary school. And then she brings in like how that ties to her, what she's studying, geology.
It seems a little more like a list almost.
Well, in some ways, maybe it has to be because that's a lot to ask, a personal statement, your background, and your goals. So, I mean, hopefully you can tell a story with this and tie them together. Like I gave that example of being an athlete and a scholar. Like tie them together in the hard work, the perseverance that you're doing. And don't start it with like, ever since I was a little girl, I always wanted to study bugs. Everyone says that. Not bugs, as rocks. I always collected rocks. And yeah, so don't start it like that. Come up with something new to catch our attention. Okay, so then she talks about being a TA at her undergraduate institution and how she helped students in the classes, how it was rewarding. A comment from a student, you really helped us. And then here she's tying them together. I realized that through these 2 experiences, there's a tie between research and education. You can read along as I read myself. To be an effective science, you have to be able to communicate. And then she says how important it is to communicate the research to community and science society at large.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Currently, let's see, outreach. So she talks about outreach to local schools. So she did some teaching. She's involved in the Women in Science and Engineering group. Yeah, so it is kind of sounding a little bit like a list right now. So then here she's tying her research to the potential to affect and improve several sub-disciplines in the earth sciences. So yeah, if you can make improvements in the science itself, that impacts the entire scientific community. So that's a broader impact too. Yeah, okay. So she's gonna use the research conducted using particular equipment. improve analytical techniques. So yeah, that's another broader impact. And then here's what she's promising to do in the future. So she's done a very good job of like trying to say like all these great things, and in the future I'm going to do this. So certainly if you don't have the broader impacts already as part of your story, promise to do something. And here she's promising to do something that it helps the science. Okay, so that's someone who doesn't have like a necessarily compelling, background in her life that, but she's managed to point to all the different things that she's done that address the broader impacts. Okay?
So you mentioned a couple of times making sure that what we're proposing is the right fit for a lab that we're proposing to go into. But it's not necessarily funded for that institution, it's funded for the individual.
Yes.
Right. So, because I've heard sort of conflicting things where this is really more of a research proposal to demonstrate a student's ability to, communicate a well thought out research plan versus this idea of selecting the right mentor and the right lab to continue.
You have to have a plan.
Right.
You can't just say like, you should fund me because I'm great and because I'm going to do good science. You have to be specific about what it is that you want to do. So identifying the institution and or PIs helps you to narrow that down and be specific.
So do not go fishing.
Okay.
So that is the worst that you can do, because then every reviewer thinks you're not focused, you really don't know where you would like to go,
Yeah.
and that money is wasted.
It has to be well
So
defined,
it has,
specific.
you have to
Yeah.
think about, NSF is going to give you that money, they have to go to Congress and says, we gave that money to these and these people for these and these reasons. So if they give somebody the money for going fishing, what do you think Congress is going to say?
Forget it.
Just, and then the next time they will say, okay, we can reduce that budget by 10% because they give grants to
Yeah.
people who go fishing.
So
That's helpful because it was not the way I
Don't
understood
go fishing.
Okay.
So if you really kind of, because what I would do if I would go and apply for a PhD program and I know the school, then I would go to at least the field. Go and pick a couple of people who, like Dr. Leach said, they are doing collaborative research and say, ideally, I will work with this and this group.
Okay.
Right? And then really kind of,
like why?
if you have their research, really discuss the research and what you really kind of would like to do in that research. Right? So you can always go to grant proposals from DPIs or papers that they have published or abstract or something, right? So but avoid of really that they will say, oh, we awarded somebody something who did not know where to go or where they will end up in a year.
So the fellowship is to the individual, but we're awarding the money to support you to do what you're proposing to do.
Right.
So it's yes, it is individual, but no, not completely individual. Yeah.
That still kind of conflicts with what I've heard too, I feel like, because I've heard that you're in no way obligated to do the research you're proposing.
You can change your mind,
Yeah.
but when you're applying, you need to you have a well-defined plan
Right.
and lay that out in detail. You had your hand up back there.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask similar things that so if you describe working with a particular lab and end up either not getting accepted or deciding you want to go somewhere else that you think would be better fit later, what would happen if it happened?
It follows you, I think. Is that right? The money follows you.
Right. So you have to really kind of let your the NSF know what you're going to do and how you're changing. So you have to be accountable and you have to let NSF know what you're going to do.
I saw another hand.
Yeah, so I'm in a master's program right now, and I'll be applying for the master's, the NSF grant fellowship for the master's.
Yeah.
But I will be eventually going to a PhD, and I have some like schools and potentially professors in mind for that time period. But since it's not immediate, should I just stick with the master's program?
I would
You're better off in that.
just talk about, go into as much detail as you can about your project.
Okay.
And what is really kind of, a thing that you should also really kind of consider, there are a lot more PhD applicants than applicants for master's granting institutions, although the master's granting institutions are waking up and saying, oh man, we are competitive as well. But NSF is, and I'm not saying it's really putting no words into NSF, but they have to have an obligation to look also at schools who grant master's institutions, only master's degrees. So they cannot say, oh, all the awards go to a PhD
No.
The school, unless the awards from the master's
No.
institutions were really not good. But
No.
they have to have a balanced portfolio, and sometimes it may go actually in your favor to be at a master's.
We've never had a discussion like that on my panel.
Okay.
We don't even worry about it.
Okay.
It's like, if you are doing a master's, that's fine. We'll support it. Maybe some people will care, but ours hadn't.
So I've laid out a three-part plan, like part one to be completed as a master's, part 2 and 3 to be completed as a PhD, because part 2 and 3 of my project actually cannot be completed in this
Okay.
at SF State.
Okay.
So I've identified that UCSF and UC Berkeley have the biomechanical facilities and material science departments
Uh-huh.
that I could do part 2 and 3 in.
Okay.
So I put that in here.
Are part 2 and 3 separately at UCSF and Cal?
No, it's either well, it depends.
I would identify one institution for your PhD and say, I also have the ability, the support from Cal.
Okay.
You know,
Because like the material science part is, maybe Cal's more.
choose the strongest,
Yeah.
if you can make a stronger case for Cal, choose Cal and say UCSF can support me locally.
The application, I haven't actually contacted anyone at Cal or UCSF to say, hey, I have this project, does that fit into your lab? But I know that I know your lab can do this. I mentioned you in my application.
It's okay. They're not going to know until you apply and you come with an NSF fellowship, and they're going to say, yes, please.
I would be amazed if the I says, oh no, we cannot go in our move if you come with funding. Oh man.
If you come with funding, like,
Time,
right? Okay, so don't worry about that.
So
Just
go ahead and
make your strongest case.
Identify the lab and in the application, and
Yeah.
then if I get the money, tell the lab.
Yes. When you apply, yes. Yeah.
So for the future goals, you write that in your personal statement. What if, say you're going to be applying for a different program, not like just a PhD, but like a deviant PhD? Would you
What's a
talk
deviant
about,
PhD?
a degree in veterinary medicine and then dual PhD at the same time?
Okay.
But would you talk about that in your future goals, because it's not necessarily applied in your like proposed research yet, because you haven't gotten to that stage yet?
Are you a first-year master's student?
Yes.
So really you should focus on your current research and then just talk about briefly what you're going to do in the future and
Yeah.
explain that. I wouldn't
Okay.
spend a
And
lot
then
of
you
time
would
on
just
it.
put that in your personal statement then, in your future goals.
Yeah, and if it relates to your proposed research, you can also end there too.
Okay.
But this is where the bleach may come in, because when I'm on a panel, I hear some people really kind of say we are not here to really develop the career of MDs or ODs or whatever, or medical, something that is related to health-related issues. Therefore, NIH is there. So, Mary, can you really kind of allude if that is discussed?
I mean, like I said at the very beginning, like if you're going to go off and be a doctor in some rural area, that's your life goal.
Right.
And NSF is just supporting your research while you're a PhD student. So that doesn't bother me. But just, I guess, be careful.
be careful that it doesn't really look that they are supporting, because the program officers or the it's not only the panel who really kind of, because there's a couple of levels before your grant is actually really kind of given to you. So first the panel recommendation, so the panel recommends, but then NSF decides, right? So and if NSF decides that it's too much medical, then you may be out of the run, in spite of the panel being really recommending you. So I would really kind of be careful when I use that word medical, right? So because NSF is there for basic research, and they like to, because there is, I don't know if you follow the literature, there is really kind of supposed to be a void of very skilled, trained PhD people. So and NSF right now is really strong on that we educate the future workforce, so that we really kind of are strong in that aspect. So, and not for medical school, right? So they feel medical schools, they should go to NIH.
So focus on the PhD.
Yeah, focus on the PhD.
Did you have your hand up again? No. Okay, good. Wow, we almost took 2 hours. Okay, I'm happy to discuss individual things too, at least for a little bit. I can scan a graph.
Thanks, Mary.
Oh, yeah, you're welcome. I leave for a conference tomorrow, so I am swamped. But I can scan it right now and give you some immediate feedback. If you want to go get it, I'll be here for a few minutes. Or
You're welcome.
when you log in and get it.
Bye, Mary. Thanks again.
Yeah, email it to me and I'll do what I can. But okay, it might not be until a week from now. Question. Okay.
I just wanted to, I had some topics that I was going to talk about in my personal statement.
Yeah.
It's a little bit messy, but I have
Just tell me.
okay, I have a pretty good list of things to talk about, and I was wondering if I should nix some of them or not. For instance, like I studied abroad for a year and was learning German, and
Why is that relevant?
well, so on my GPA, I didn't pass one of the classes while I was in Germany because I was learning the class in German, or no, I was learning German.
One sentence.
One sentence.
Don't spend a lot of time on it.
I shouldn't talk about the experience though itself of language learning or
Sure,
being
but
in another
I
culture.
mean, that just helped. That's not a broader impact so much as that you went to Germany, you had this international experience, but I wouldn't spend a lot of time on it.
Okay.
Explain the GPA, though.
Okay, and then among that there are things like I'm teaching labs right now. I'm also I'm in OSA and I've done outreach there. Like volunteer type things would take precedent over study abroad or TA.
Yeah, unless you're TA, unless you've had like a particular impact or you've had student feedback that's really positive that you can quote, or if you can talk about different methods of teaching or like how students were learning in a unique way or something like that, like really hands-on. Or
should I talk about my personal view on I find education really, really important to my life and everybody's life. But
how's that going to impact?
I was thinking for broader impacts, it would be related in the sense that since I teach and I have gone to student outreach and taught at schools, I'm very, very vested in our society's education system.
Make that case.
Okay.
Make that case that you've demonstrated already that you are invested in this outreach sort of thing in education. But then say, like, how are you going to do that? What are you going to do in the future to demonstrate that?
Okay. And then the last thing I wanted to ask about was I have some past internships that are related to politics instead of research or instead of science in general. And I find them valuable in the sense that, like, there's politics everywhere, and sort of learning the ropes in that setting has allowed me to sort of communicate with people better. But I'm not sure if I should mention that in my personal statement at all.
Do you have maybe not unless you have a future goal to go do a congressional science fellowship or something like that. If you were going to do that, then you could bring it in.
Okay.
Which would be interesting because they do have these congressional science fellowships. Why don't you Google that and think about whether you want to include it or not.
Okay.
But you might be able to leave it out, given what you've told me already.
Okay,
She wrote
okay.
like
You can leave it in.
I
Bring it. It's not leave it.
So, I worked in the National Park Service for a bit, and there was, like, we did annual reports at the end of the month, where my supervisor and I would submit, like, a 2-page report, which would go in a larger report, and then would be published online. But our name isn't, like, attached to the section. That's
Call
okay?
that your publication, that's yours.
Okay.
You can say you were co-author, that you co-authored this report.
Okay, great.
And then list it, even if it's just a URL or something.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then I got the San Francisco State Graduate Equity Fellowship.
I don't know what that is.
It's supposed to be for people who like had economic or whatever disadvantaged backgrounds. How would you recommend that?
In your personal statement, explain, does that give you a stipend to live off of?
No, it's just a
Supports you.
yeah.
So list it as an award in your application and then also talk about it here. But it sounds like you should explain the economic disadvantage in your personal statement.
Yeah. So then should I mention the fellowship and explain the economic circumstances, or just explain the?
Yeah, well, the fellowship was for that reason. So say I was awarded this fellowship because number one, it's an award.
Yeah.
And then say what it's for and then explain the situation. Yeah?
Awesome.
Okay.
Thank you. And then if I have a few last questions, if you wouldn't mind giving us a quick
I'll
scan, if
scan,
you're
yeah.
up for it.
I'll scan.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I guess like the, how much did you say the cutters from our home state look over it?
They don't look over it, but they certainly give, the awards are distributed. So the top part of the awards that the panel ranks at highest, they just basically get approved by NSF. The bottom part of the ranking, the bottom part of the panel's rankings of the topmost applications, those go out and get distributed geographically.
Okay, but there's no, like, policymakers in our home state don't get to make any decisions or look at our thing, right? They wouldn't have
I
time.
don't think that they ever see the application. It's just a matter of like, okay, we don't have any in Ohio. We need an award in Ohio. This person's in Ohio, let's get it. Yeah,
Okay, great.
something like that.
Okay,
You're thinking about writing to a congressman or something?
no, not at all. It was just
Oh.
like, I
No, they don't.
specifically like moved here because I'm going to like just legal to discriminate against blacks in my home state, so I didn't want that to be a factor.
Okay.
So yeah, just curious.
What home state?
Virginia. So
There are probably a lot of applications from Virginia.
probably from like the DC area.
Yeah.
and stuff.
Well, there'd be a lot more here than from Virginia.
New York and here, yeah. Texas, a lot. Question?
It's your home state, not the institution that you propose to study at.
Right. Home state. So high school, that's the high school question.
One more question I forgot to ask. I have a publication, but it's a conference paper publication. Should I advertise that as, okay.
Oh yes, list it as a public, if you can cite it somewhere in your personal statement, like get it in there, put it down,
Okay.
anything, yeah. Is that a question?
Yeah, how is like tutoring for pay like stack up at all? Is that okay?
I would frame it, if you're tutoring, what are you tutoring?
SAT prep, so that's not really very
I don't know what that is.
good. SAT prep. That's
Oh,
like,
SAT prep, oh, yeah,
no good.
not unless, yeah, I don't think so.
I know it's not any good, but
List it on the application in those 16,000 characters, this phone thing.
Apologize, I came in late, so I think you may have touched on this earlier.
Go ahead.
The whole sports thing, like I've gotten really mixed, so I'm an athlete and I was deemed an
Sports?
athlete. Yeah, I mean I was captain in college and I've done some like national level, I'm a rower. So, but I've gotten really mixed messages. Some people are like, oh we don't, like some people in academia are like, oh that's a distraction, we don't want you. And then some people are like, that's great, it shows
It's
you have a lot of
great.
drive, so.
Yes. So did you hear me say the thing? So I said something like, I was advising a student to say, I had one, it was an all-American something or other, cross-country skier, I don't know what it was exactly, but like, get that in there on the online application where you can, where you list awards and other things. And then if you can bring it in it personalizes the application, and we talk about it. We're like, oh, hey, I remember a tennis player from several years ago that we talked about who was went to, qualified for the Olympics team or something like that. Totally. Frame it like all the like hard work, perseverance in your athletics, how that demonstrates like how perseverant you are in your academics or something like that. If you can like tie it together so that it's logical, yeah, I say so.
Okay.
And I've been on the panel, so maybe I know better than the other person who said no.
Okay.
Yeah. That's it?
Should I emphasize leadership at all? Because I was the president of the physics club here and the Optical Society student chapter.
Yeah.
So those
Leadership, yes, yeah. All in any awards, all in any leadership, outreach, anything.
Thank
yes.
you.
You're welcome.